This aircraft will be the cheapest gateway to the airlines. You will find out why you might not have a chance to practice on this aircraft. Let's try power on stall. Hello friends, this is Pilot's Way channel and today we have a very interesting and unusual video. Today I'm going to tell you about this little fella, Cessna 150. Maybe someday this aircraft will pave the way to this aviation. Cessna 150 had been in production from 1959 to 1977, and there had been 24,000 aircraft produced during that period. After 1977, this aircraft had different engine, underwent some modifications, and it was named Cessna 152, and there had been produced around 8,500 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Just imagine how many aircraft is that. Oleg Aksionov, who is an instructor in Miami, will guide my first steps in flying this simple but at the same time complex aircraft. His Instagram link is down below, follow him and ask any questions about getting a license in the US. Also, he can give you some useful advice on how to optimize your starting process in order to make it affordable. Don't be shy and message him about any questions you have. Many people are sure that this aircraft is rather small, but if you look closer, it turns out to be bigger than you think. The fuselage is about 24 feet. It's just 3 feet shorter than Cessna 152. The wingspan difference is only 2.6 feet. As for the speed, here's what we have. The cruise speed of Cessna 152 is around 82 knots. Not very fast, I would say. Maximum speed that you can reach without any problems is around 107 knots. Stall speed with flaps extended is 42 knots. Cessna 150 has many modifications, and today we review modification Mike, which was the last one in production. So now let me tell you about key differences that are going to be crucial when choosing your aircraft. So, when 150 was first produced, it didn't have a special index, so it just was as Cessna 150. It didn't have a rear window, and inside it was pretty dark and uncomfortable. Also, it didn't have this beautiful fin. It had a rectangular-looking one, not as nice, I think. The first modification, named Alpha, had a very important modernization. The main landing gear is mounted 2 inches further back, and here is why. Imagine a situation when there was a passenger behind in this aircraft and a lot of cargo in the aft. This led to longitudinal unbalance, which caused tail heaviness, which is not very nice. That's why the landing gear was moved, and as a result of that, the nose wheel steering became more effective. Then, in 1964, more modernization came with the model 150 Delta. The rear window was installed, which had a nice name to it, called Omnivision. The cruise speed was the price to pay for this new feature, as the aerodynamic performance was reduced, but it looked much nicer and more appealing. Moreover, inside it was more spacious, but as I have said before, 2.6 knots of cruise speed was the price to pay. The next model, 150 Foxtrot, which was produced in 1966, had more new features. First of all, the fin itself was changed. The one on this aircraft was first designed for 150 Foxtrot. It became more aero-like and looks much nicer, but to be frank, aerodynamically speaking, it became a little worse. Also, Foxtrot cockpit door became wider, and honestly, it's pretty hard to picture how it looked before, but as the manufacturer claims, it became 23% wider. As for taxiing, it's extremely controllable, especially in comparison with multi-engine aircraft or something heavier. Yeah, but if we compare it to Piper, I think in this regard it's a little worse, but much easier than Cessna 152, that's for sure. Yeah, I agree. But anyway, occasionally you have to apply brakes, nevertheless it's rather sensitive. Cessna production had started in 1966 in the city of Reims in France, and the aircraft produced there had a key difference. They were equipped with the Rolls-Royce Continental engine, which was called O200AS. And they have a distinct designation F-150F. And if you ever see this aircraft designated, for example, F-150M, it means that it was produced in Reims. If I'm not mistaken, there are around 1,600 aircraft that were produced there in France. Starting from 1966, the G version had been in production. It had cockpit doors that were bent outwards, which added up to 1.6 inches in space from each side, and the cockpit became 3.2 inches wider, which is pretty important for such a small aircraft. Version L had appeared in 1971, which had a slightly modernized spring steel landing gear. The taxi lights also were moved from the leading edge of the wing to the front part of the fuselage. Thanks to that, visibility during taxi is much better, but due to constant heat, the lifetime of the light was reduced drastically. I am 5'6", and you see the space I have above? It's just not enough. And if you are tall, you should consider that if you want to buy Cessna 150. Also, the other thing should be mentioned. The seats that are lower had been mounted on the aircraft only since 1973 and in L version. But before that, it had high seats, and even if you are 5'7", it would be rather tight there. During such maneuvers as power on stall, it requires good coordination from you, and it teaches you that, unlike other aircraft, such as Piper, for example, that is forgiving in this regard. Cessna, on the other hand, during power on stall, if your actions are not coordinated, you can quickly get into spin. Let's perform power on stall technique on this aircraft. Apply full power. Starting to climb. Build a visual path and fix the pitch on this path and coordinate the aircraft with the rudder so it doesn't veer off. At low speed like this one, the aircraft has a left turning tendency. Continue climbing, climbing, climbing. Oh wow. You see, it tilted a little to the side, but actually good job. The M version had been in production from 1975 to 1977. The key difference of this modification is the increased area of the empennage. It was done in order to increase the controllability of the aircraft. You know what? I like the instrument panel here. It's not complex and it's pretty easy to read, and if you have a flight experience, for you, reading these instruments won't be an issue. The thrust control is traditional for Cessna here. To be honest with you, I like a conventional thrust lever much better, but it's okay. Flaps extension is electrical, and on this version you have these flaps position fixators. So here you can just extend your flaps to 10 degrees, for example, and continue aviating. But in some aircraft you have to hold it in the desired position for some time. If you receive a license on this aircraft, I think you will be very experienced, as it helps to develop a skill, and I respect that. As for me, personally, despite me having some flight hours prior to flying Cessna 150, it took some time to get used to it, to the sensibility and coordination, which in turn gave me experience and a good basis for my piloting skills. Now let's dive deeper and make one thing clear, which is why you might not have a chance to practice on this particular aircraft. Today we review an M version, which has an empty weight of 1,120 pounds. All aircraft have one characteristic, called useful load, which is simply put what aircraft can take, I mean passengers, fuel and cargo. And useful load on this aircraft is only 490 pounds. So let's say we have an instructor who is 240 pounds, a cadet who is 220 pounds, and that's it. For you both, there won't be enough useful load left for fuel. The owner of this aircraft who I gave lessons to is 200 pounds, and I am 200 pounds, so for us it was pretty inconvenient, and we had to precisely calculate the amount of fuel that we should take on board. Even you and I today would not be able to take off with full fuel tanks, as we would exceed the useful load. And this is the key problem of this aircraft, as you constantly have to calculate the fuel. So now we have 9 gallons on board. So this is one thing that I don't like in this aircraft, as you constantly have to calculate fuel and maintain your weight. And it won't be forgiven if you have some extra weight as you just exceed the limit. That's why you shouldn't be surprised when the first question from the flight school if you want to practice on Cessna 150 will be about your weight. Yes, this question is crucial if you want to fly on Cessna 150.
Use runway 15 clear for takeoff. Traffic at a mile and a half miles. What's up?
The climb is very smooth. Yeah, you feel that the aircraft is loaded. Almost all Cessna 150 are equipped with 100 horsepower Continental O200, and in fact, this is the reason why the aircraft has such a small useful load. But, starting from 1977, it had been in production as Cessna 152, and it was equipped with 110 horsepower Lycoming, which increased its useful load up to 570 pounds. Alexei, listen, on social media I saw some posts about Aviation Village, and as I understand, it's starting to develop in Russia as well. Here it's very popular. Well, yeah, we bought a piece of land near the runway in Krasnodar, not far away from the sea, and people try to build an aviation village there. I have no idea if there is anything similar in other places in Russia, but in Krasnodar it's pretty good, because it's, as I said, not far away from the sea, and Krasnodar itself is one of the most popular places to move to. Previously, I advertised this project, left a phone number, but some people started messaging me and asked many questions. So guys, down below you can see all the information, so contact them and ask any questions you want, as I just won't be able to answer them as professionally as the owner. Cessna 150 had once a very serious problem. In Canada there was an accident in which a cadet pushed the rudder pedal to its limit, and the rudder unfortunately jammed, and he got into a spin, and unfortunately could not recover. This problem was solved by installing this rudder travel limiters, so now it won't jam in this position. If you have decided to become an owner of Cessna 150, there are a number of things that should be taken into consideration, as they are going to always be present. Well, first of all, the price is pretty affordable. The purchase itself and maintenance is not expensive at all. That's not even debatable. You can find an aircraft like this one on the market for only $15,000. Once I even saw a price of $13,000, however, the time in service was over 1,800 hours. Therefore, engine overhaul is required. But for $15,000, you can find an aircraft with some resource. For $20,000, you will find an aircraft with a decent resource. For $25,000 or $30,000, you will have a lot to choose from. What is aircraft rental hour for practicing? On average, market price is around $100 per flight, plus CFI, which is around $50 per flight, and you get $150. Yeah, you won't find the aircraft more affordable. In order to check the engine condition and oil level, there is a special door that you can open, and from here you can take a look and assess engine condition, check oil level, and do some other stuff. And I would say that I like more when aircraft have a bigger side door that you can open, like for example in Piper Warrior, and check everything you need. But of course, this is way better than when some aircraft have just a little window-like opening, and the only thing you can do basically is just check oil level, but you won't be able to assess the engine condition and other important things. For that, you would just have to take a screw and disassemble the whole engine cowling.
Вот такое вот решение.
Share this video on social media and you will have even more people around you who are in love with aviation. But when you leave a like on this video and subscribe to this channel, then the YouTube algorithms themselves will see that you are a fan of aviation and recommend you more videos of similar content. See you at the aerodrome! Well, when you don't fly long periods, you lose some skill. Oh, come on, you landed it perfectly. You see, it's very smooth during landing, you don't even notice at times how it lands.